We are thrilled that you're all here. This panel is closing out what I hope was an awesome day for everyone. I'm Amy Giddon. I'm the moderator of this amazing panel. I am the founder and CEO of Daily Haloha, which is an app for connection based on the beauty and power of shared ritual and empathy building. So technology and relationships is really close to my heart. We hope you've had a great day at the Digital Wellness Summit. Today has been a day to be able to pause and reflect and consider how to optimize our relationship to technology, but more importantly, to each other. We're going to be talking about relationships today in the context of the digital flourishing framework, which, if you don't know of it yet, it is a framework for being mindful about our digital use and thinking about how it can best serve us in all facets of our life, how to take advantage of the benefits of technology while avoiding its pitfalls. When it comes to relationships, the digital flourishing framework highlights these things: social support, sense of connection, introspection, meaningful interaction, and sense of community. And those are the topics we're going to be discussing today. So let me introduce you to these amazing panelists. I'm going to start with you, Bri Graziano. Welcome. She is the Tech Reform Digital Community Engagement Manager at Exposure Labs, and she has been instrumental in the impact campaign for the groundbreaking film, The Social Dilemma. So Bri, tell us a little bit more about you. And if you're game, please share a story about how technology has impacted relationships in your life.
Very game, Amy, and it's a thrill to be here with you all. As you said, my name is Bri Graziano, and I use she, her pronouns. And my role on the Social Dilemma Impact campaign has been focused on creative strategy and building out digital content, campaign communications, and community engagement opportunities for our work. And I think a personal story that I wanted to highlight with the impact of technology is on my own life. And it happened in the fall of 2016 when I first became a first-time mom and experienced bringing new life into the world at a time of political turmoil. And at this time, I struggled deeply with doom scrolling, especially during those late night feedings. And during those late night hours, I really generated feelings of hopelessness about the state of the world, and went into these deep dives into parenting forums and followed influencer social accounts in the parenting realm. And this ended up creating a lot of self-doubt that led me to online self-diagnose every little hiccup or cry from my newborn, for example, and going deep into these rabbit holes, especially in my postpartum state at a time that was really crucial for bonding between me and my newborn, intensified my anxieties and fears rather than helped them, and impacted my mental health and impacted my ability to be present with myself and my newborn. But fast forward to today, in better recognition of the impact of extractive technology and how it impacted my ability to be present as a mom in person, I now have 2 young children, and I'm on this continuous journey in relationship with myself, which looks like learning to recognize those triggers and also at the same time recognize that it's not my fault that these platforms have been designed to keep our attention. And in that, I'm learning to monitor my mental health when online, also knowing that these big social platforms do not have our best interests in mind. And as you said already, Amy, I'm learning to leave behind what doesn't serve you, which has been leading to establishing healthier boundaries with technology and focusing on the positive sides of technology.
Oh, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And I'm so glad that you highlighted that the foundation of our relationships really starts with us and our relationship with ourselves, right? Which is so important.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, let me introduce Gabi. We're so fortunate to have Gabi Jubran here with us today. He is one of the original founders of the Digital Wellness Collective, and we can thank him for a lot of things leading up to today. He's also the founder and executive director of Happy, helping awesome parents parent intentionally, which is one of the important sponsors behind the Digital Wellness Day. And he also has some new things cooking, which I'd love him to tell us about and tell us a little story from his life too.
Right on. Thank you, Amy. Yeah, grateful to be a part of this. It's really amazing to see Digital Wellness Day in its third year running and its reach expanding, and just the critical time that it started at, May 2020, right in the depth of like COVID internet usage. So yeah, I'm the founder and executive director of Happy, helping awesome parents parent intentionally. And really the philosophy behind it is that I look at parenting beyond a parent-child biological relationship. To me, a parent is a steward of life. And everyone has the capacity to bring more life into the world. And to me, that has to start with us giving more life to ourselves, right? And which speaks to what Bree was talking about when Amy were talking about, where I can't pour from an empty cup. Or, I have to put on my oxygen mask first so that I can put on the oxygen mask for someone else. And I think intuitively people may know that to be true, or a lot of people have heard that before. It's just really hard to put it into practice, especially when you don't have a community of practice. And so the work that I'm doing right now is really centered around how do we create the communities of practice and cultures of care? Like, how do we center care in everything that we do, caring for ourselves, caring for our families, caring for our communities, caring for Earth. To me, that is one of the main foundations of being in relationship. And what this is looking like in practice right now is I'm actually really shifting focus from biological parents to the 18 to 25-year-old demographic. And how do we start to now build pathways to self-directed education? And really, self-directed education at some level is what inspired me to get down this path. So just to speak to an anecdote around technology, YouTube is what inspired me to get down this path, both the shadow nature of it, but also the really, really important part of it. And it was really about witnessing my niece, who was 3 years old at the time, getting sucked into rabbit holes of sponsored content on YouTube, which it started off maybe with amazing intentions of learning ABCs and animal sounds, but very quickly it can devolve into something that could be really negative, or at very least is basically an advertisement for a kid who doesn't know how to read or search for anything. But the other side of it, in terms of the value that YouTube has brought to our family, is 5 years ago, my mother was actually diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And based on the information that we've had to seek out and learn from alternative channels like YouTube, we've really been able to experiment and take more homeopathic route to help her improve slightly. And so it is this double-edged sword of like, it could be really dark. And if you're using it with intention, you can actually direct your own pathway of education and learn anything that you desire.
I love that. And I love steward of life. I'm going to borrow that if that's okay. I'll give you full credit, but we've talked about birthing humans, raising humans, caring for our elder humans, right? And we're all stewards of life in one way or another. I love that. Thank you, Gabi. And rounding out our amazing panel is Jean Rogers. Jean, welcome. Jean is the director of the Screen Time Action Network at Fair Play, which is a global collaborative community of practitioners, educators, advocates, and parents, all working together to reduce excessive and harmful screen use in childhood. So Jean, what are you a steward of? And tell us more about you and share a story with us.
Thanks, Amy. I'm so happy to be here. And I love that phrase also, Gabi. It's really beautiful. Every day in my role, I have the privilege of talking with families and professionals who serve families, like psychologists, school psychologists, teachers, about how technology is impacting their relationships and their personal lives. And I'm here to tell you today, it's not that cut and dry. There are complex interactions and dynamics that make each situation unique. And I think there are just some overarching questions like, is tech enhancing your relationship? As in, when a parent is deployed and they can video chat with their child, or is it dividing and creating barriers, as when parents feel like a TikTok personality is the primary influence in their child's life instead of them and their values? So these are the complexities of it. And in my own life, I just was thinking of a situation that happens to us since COVID. We belong to a very active church with people of all ages, and we would gather together, hug each other, sing, and have potlucks and talent shows. And that all went away during the pandemic. And we went online, the church went online. And now that we're back, we're in a hybrid situation. And many people are choosing the convenience of staying online. And it's a little sad, we never see them. We never laugh with them. We don't sing with them. There's probably half of our congregation there, and tech has essentially disbanded our community. So we have to be careful of, what habits we put in place and how we keep them or don't keep them. But I'm really thrilled to be here with everybody and discuss these complexities, and happy Digital Wellness Day.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So we are about to dive into some pretty meaty questions for the group here, but I wanted to let all of our listeners know that we're going to reserve some time at the end for your questions. So please pop your questions in the Q&A button, not the chat, but we're going to look for your questions in the Q&A, and we hope to address them at the end. So let's dive in. Technology is not new and relationships are as old as time, but there does seem something really poignant about this moment that we're in right now. Certainly with the pandemic, which has necessitated being apart from the people that matter so much to us. And as we're coming together, Jean, like you said, back to church, back to school, back to work, it's the same, but it's not the same at all. So there seems to be something, really interesting about this moment. So Gabi, I'd love to hear from you about, maybe putting this moment into some historical context. And to you, what is special about the moment that we find ourselves in right now when we think about technology and relationships?
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, I think it's really important to look at the historical context and to really define, at least from my perspective, like what I mean by technology. So the way I look at it is, really, it's any tool that we've harnessed or created to advance human potential, which could be potential for good or bad, perceived. And to me, the first human relationship to technology is fire, without which, we would not be who we are. We wouldn't have the rituals of cooking or sharing stories around a fire, which are vital to our humanity and our connection. And really, from my perspective, technology that was developed after fire was harnessed was meant to enhance connection or simplified work to be able to make more time and space for what people actually valued most. And it's really only in recent memory that with technology's current impact, and I would be remiss if I didn't name the current perverse incentives of the attention economy, in which people and planet are seen as resources that are meant to be extracted. But really in this moment, I want to focus on a slightly different lens and go back to fire for a second. So humans knew that fire was powerful and destructive. So we created boundaries and containers to hold it. That's the fire pit over there. Oh, here's the fireplace. That's where it stays. And right now, the internet has virtually no boundaries. And to me, people's inner fires of emotion, like anger, are spreading and creating wildfires across the social landscape, while the inner fire of creativity may be being dimmed by the overwhelm of how much we're consuming. And so this has been exacerbated for me during the time of COVID, where it feels like isolation has in part atrophied the muscle for social connection. And the times that humans spent embodied and cooking around a fire, sharing stories, feels like somewhat of a distant memory to who we are. But I feel it really just lies dormant in most of us in our modern world. And I sit with the question of how are we creating boundaries and around how we use technology, and how are we creating containers to process big emotions and channel the creative fire within us into something impactful.
Wow, I really love that analogy. It gets me thinking about those new little artificial candles that you have when you go to the restaurant. These are fires that give no warmth. right? So thinking about technology, like what is technology like when it actually brings warmth and is a hearth? And what is it like when it's artificial and it's fire, with no warmth? I'm going to ponder that some more. So let's dive into some particular context of relationships and where technology has a role to play. And, think a little bit deeper in some of the bigger, challenges and opportunities in specific relational contexts where the stakes are really high. And let's start with the context of families and parents and children. And we can also think metaphorically about being stewards of life and all the different family relationships we have. Jean, I know your life's work that has been spent so much in this realm of thinking about children and parents and children. So I'd love to start with you and get your perspective on, what are the real unique opportunities and pitfalls when it comes to technology and relationships and families?
Sure, Amy, thanks. There was a Pew study out in July of 2020 that revealed 73% of young parents today say that parenting is harder than it was in previous generations. And they call it out. They call out digital media and social media specifically as the culprit. And the saddest part for me is when I hear from parents who feel as though they've lost their children. So whether it's to Fortnite or other games or social media scrolling or just an obsession with phones, this obsession with screens, they feel like they've given birth to this beautiful child. They expected to have a family relationship. And then it's like this unwelcome profit-driven force came in and stole their attention. And the content, like I said in the beginning, is shaping the children's character and their behavior and their futures. And so at the Action Network, we call ourselves a no judgment zone. And it's really important for parents to know that you're not weak. A lot of parents think, I should be doing more. That you're not showing a lack of discipline, that your children are drawn in because these apps and games and devices are designed to keep them hooked. And they're not bad kids either. The system is working against you. These big corporations know it, and they continue to drive algorithms for profit. So while we at Fair Play work to end these predatory practices, I have a few ideas for you on things that you can do to maintain the strong, growing relationships in your family while this is going on. So when your children are little, I recommend learn as much as you can about child development so that the tech is not displacing critical skills that can only be developed in childhood. 80% of a person's brain is developed in the first 3 years of life. So we want to make sure that screen use during that period isn't delaying language acquisition or preventing babies from learning how to self-soothe, really important skill. What they need is to hear lots of words, and they need real faces to respond to in their face. And that's what creates that bonding that we want, that fosters a really secure relationship with our children. And then when your children are school aged, a rule of thumb I say is just delay, delay, delay. You've probably heard of the program Wait Until 8. Some parents are worried about safety and they want a cell phone so that they can be tethered to their children all day, wherever they go. But developing independence and self-confidence and the ability to feel accomplishment of themselves is critical also. So we have to balance that. And then probably the question I get most is, what do I do about my teens? Is it too late? And it's never too late. I say, have those conversations about phones and their tech just the way you would about drugs or smoking. Understand that all you see is the device. All we see is, the child's head pointing down at the device and they seem zoned out. But there's so much in there. Their friends are in there. Their pop culture that they love is in there. Just to understand there are important things to them, and just taking it away without a discussion is not going to help your relationship with them. So don't just say, put that thing down. Just realize that it means something to them, and having a conversation would be great. And the best way for families to use tech, I say, is bridging. So do things on the screen that will take you off the screen. We have kids that learn to cook during the pandemic, pretty cool, or learn to teach their dog to roll over. So there are really fun things to do together online. And I have a great resource that we're going to put in the chat called Dear Parents, and it will help you to shape those conversations with the young people in your life.
Wow, so many rich tips. Thank you so much, Jean. I think we're going to hear, we're going to circle back to this because I think we've all talked about family in one way or another, right? Because it's what we care about most. So, so thank you for those great tips. And let's just open the aperture a little bit to community, right? We're in relationship with ourselves, with our families, with our friend groups, but we live in community, we thrive in community, and we live in culture. And we know that technology also has a profound, impact on how we feel in terms of whether we belong, whether we're hearing each other. So Bree, why don't you help us out here? Tell us what your take is on how technology can help us live and thrive in community and what the pitfalls are as well.
Sure, absolutely. As a community engagement manager, I've been far too excited to nerd out on community aspect of relationships with everyone today. And so to share, to me, the opportunity in culture and community with technology is to design more platforms and digital spaces that reflect our values and honor our humanity and lived experiences. Digital spaces where we're able to share and learn from each other and prioritize supporting each other with care and intention will enrich the environment around us. And that's actually why I'm slightly, if not more than slightly obsessed about what you're doing through the Daily Haloha, Amy. Operating in a digital space that fosters empathy and celebrates our shared humanity, and one that allows for mutuality can be a really powerful tool to foster digital wellness and wholeness within ourselves and in our communities. And I think that the more technology is designed in a way that can foster spaces like that, like you've created, Amy, culture will start seeing more positive shifts in the right direction. Gabi acknowledged this right off the bat, that the challenge with technology now, I think as well, comes from creating online spaces and exchanging information online in a way where we can still have critical, nuanced conversations about our lived experiences, values, and beliefs. And yeah, Gabi, you said technology can be an amazing tool to bring us together and increase our human potential. And I love that. But we're seeing that the same technology can also erode our mental health, divide and polarize our relationships, and tear down communities. And in the film, The Social Dilemma, revealed through testimony from tech insiders, the business model of big social is what's fundamentally at odds with society right now, because it optimizes for engagement at all costs. We need a fire pit for technology. Without that, the business model of big tech, big social has naturally led us to a system that's designed to addict us and serve us content that keeps us on their platforms longer. And online algorithms in many ways are optimizing for that. They're not optimizing for our quality of life. They're not optimizing for deep, meaningful friendships and relationships at scale. They're optimizing for metrics like likes, the unit of measure that they're counting. And it's how many times somebody sees something and how many times somebody shares something and how much money they're making through that particular platform and engagement. So at scale, I feel like we do need to reform technology so that it not only optimizes for our health and wellness, but celebrates our commonalities and what brings us together, which is the beauty and foundation of any true community in my mind, not technology that pushes us further apart.
Oh, thank you so much, Bree. And I love the note that you ended on, which is thinking about how can technology help us find and celebrate our shared humanity, right? Rather than prey on our differences. So that's lovely. Thank you. One other really interesting context that I wanted to explore is the intergenerational context. We've already all spoken. I think, Gabi, you in particular, you referenced both your nieces and your mom, right? We all live in intergenerational families, yet the way modern society is, we don't live in community in intergenerational enclaves of like our ancestors did. So I'm curious, Gabi, from your perspective, what's unique about intergenerationality? Is that a word? The intergenerational relationships that we have, and how might technology play a role there? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and thank you for the question. And just to build off of some of what all of y'all have shared, especially Jean with regards to parents, it really feels like biological parents are the thread that are the bridge that are holding together all of the other generations, because the parents have to take care of their kids and then maybe financially or energetically have to take care of their parents. Oh, by the way, you also have to take care of yourself and have a job that produces for the family and have friends somehow in that process as well, and hobbies maybe. And so it doesn't really feel fair. Like the responsibility shouldn't entirely fall on the parent, I feel like, to hold those threads, because historically in tribes, parents did the, let's say, hunting and gathering or the farm work while the elders taught and played with the young ones. And so I'm curious about how technology can foster connection between elders who have wisdom and young people with energy and raw talent who are hungry for a different world. So, we have these elders with vast amounts of knowledge that needs to be shared, and plenty of young folks who can support them with their relationship to technology to share that knowledge. So I believe that we can create opportunities that uses technology to facilitate connection and learning in person, so that, as I mentioned before, that muscle for social connection can be strengthened in different ways between the different generations. And then just another idea that I have around using technology to build more bridges between generations, and there's maybe people already working on this. I've seen some examples of this in the Netherlands, but I see a huge opportunity to create a platform that facilitates housing opportunities for young adults by having them help in the homes of the elderly, so that the elderly feel safe to stay in their homes. And to me, part of the challenge around this, though, is it'll be around structuring agreements and establishing trust between the people before there's a, roommate relationship situation. But just a couple ideas I have around that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Being in the startup world myself, I'm aware of several startups, many startups that are focused on intergenerational connection, co-housing, and it's pretty fascinating. One thing that has been, quite alarming for anyone who's working in the area of social wellness are the statistics around loneliness and social isolation. And, it's been on the rise for decades. Historically, we look at maybe our older generations as being most susceptible to loneliness, but now it's across the board, and Gen Z is really hard hit by loneliness. So there's such an opportunity, and our current platforms tend to stratify by age. You don't see too many of our elders on TikTok. You don't see too many Gen Zers on Facebook, and so it goes, right? So there's really an opportunity for these new platforms to very intentionally bridge across the generations. Yeah, so thank you for that, Gabi. The last question I want to delve into is what's next, right? I think we've heard today some amazing tips for being mindful, how to make the most of technology that wasn't built necessarily to let our humanity shine. We've heard some important watch outs, as well as some kind of little nuggets of shine in there that have served us well. But thinking ahead, and what can we do differently to shape technology in a way that serves our relationships better? I'm curious about the power of community. I know we've spoken before this group, and we all are strong believers in what's possible together and in community. So how can we leverage community and our relationships to culture to shape a future that we feel, a future of technology that serves us even stronger? Bree, I know you're all about community, so why don't you tackle this one first? How can we use community
Absolutely.
to get where we want to go?
Sure. Working at Exposure Labs, which is a hybrid impact and film production company, we really have centered around storytelling as a powerful tool to help build community and create empathy and shape culture and foster movements and shift those systems. And so I think, even to dive deeper into that further, I believe there's immense power in starting by owning and sharing your own story with others. I think they can be in powerful ways to help us heal from harmful narratives and imagine the way forward. And I actually remember a metric somewhere that I read that said something like a story well told is 7 times more memorable than sharing a stat or pure data alone. So I think even just simply sharing a few sentences about your own lived experiences, what gives you hope, or if comfortable, what causes you harm, can help bridge the most divisive divides. And I ultimately believe we are the stories we tell. The power of experience sharing helps us find common ground in our relationships and helps promote change from the person to person level in our communities all the way up to systems. And I think that can be a really powerful thing.
Wonderful, thank you. Jean, you too have been on the forefront of movements. You're in the advocacy world, which sort of, takes all of us. So what are your perspectives on how working together can help us shape a future that we want to live in?
Well, I think what we're talking about today, like I said in the beginning, is complex. It takes a lot of us. There's no one solution to how we get to a state of digital wellness. And so in 2017, our executive director, Josh Gulen, had a hypothesis that a lot of people doing this work were feeling isolated. And we would hear from, say, a librarian who said, I'm the only one in this school who thinks this is a problem, or pediatricians who didn't really know how to share that this information with families in a non-judgmental way. And we talked to many, many people, and we started the Screen Time Action Network because we didn't want to sit around and talk about the research. We wanted to do something about it together. It's a we solution, we feel. And so we started gathering people. We were probably about 500 members in 2018 when we had our first conference in Boston, and people were thrilled to be in the room with like-minded people just like we are today. And now we're about 1,800 people globally. So we've created work groups, which create smaller communities within our large global community. And in these work groups, we have people who've called themselves accidental activists. So they've come, they've maybe met others, professionals or parents or both, passionate about a topic like screens in schools, mental health, early childhood. And they come up with solutions together, and we really need help. We need all the help we can get. So we believe in that force, like Bree said, of community that really can accomplish more than we can do as any individual in this work.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. And it's so needed because the complexity, as you say, and the magnitude of what we're up against really requires some stamina, which we find in community. Gabi, you mentioned at the outset that you're doing work around communities of practice. Can you help us understand what that is and how that plays into what we can do together?
Yeah, totally. Coming from my hypothesis or my theory of change around this is, if we want the system to change, then we need to take better care of our own well-being, because the market will adapt to support what it is that we demand. So if we decide that we want more tools that support our well-being, the market provides that. I wouldn't have thought 5 years ago that Calm and Headspace would be multi-billion-dollar organizations, or at least valued at that. And so there is a wave of moving in this direction, and with the Daily Haloha and so many tools. I mean, the fact that we even have a digital wellness day and there's so many people tuning in means that it's something that people are hungry for. And so to me, the more that we develop community online and in person, the more it actually begins to fill the roles of things that we may traditionally, at least with the current form of technology, outsource technology to. To me, the community of practice hits on a lot of the things that I jump to my device for. I jump to my device for connection. I jump to it for learning, for entertainment. I jump to it for work, and I jump to it for buying things. And what I found as I've kind of established my own community of practice around how do we actually take better care of our own well-being and establish these cultures of care, I find that it fills a lot of those needs that I would traditionally go to my device for outside of that container, outside of that community of practice. I feel connected, I'm learning, I'm working, I'm entertained, and sometimes I just buy things because I'm distracted and there's something shiny and I'm trying to fill some kind of hole. So I buy less things just by being in this community of practice. And so, yeah, just in terms of the plug for what I'm doing right now, there is a session happening after this one that's going to be not a webinar. It's going to be more of a traditional Zoom meeting with breakout rooms. The community of practice I started centers around an analogy that I've been working with called Juice and Sauce Club. So juice is energy, sauce is that which comes from the creative process, the tangible or intangible expression, your secret sauce or your special sauce. And the way that we practice being in community is through what we call test kitchen environments. So these are spaces that you can show up with whatever ingredients you have, and you have a place to process, be messy, experiment, and trust that through this process, we can use the tools that we have to create something nourishing for us and for our communities. So that's just the plug for what I'm doing, but you could start your own community of practice or your own test kitchen around whatever it is that you find meaningful. You could start one around digital wellness and how to have a more meaningful relationship to technology. You could start one around social entrepreneurship, around food justice in my local community. And to me, it comes down to like, who do you feel safe to authentically express with? Where do you feel safe to authentically express? And can you then commit to creating a container for that, a consistent time and place in which you connect over the different things that you're passionate or curious about? You don't need a language, you don't need a framework that I'm offering you. You could just start your own.
Thank you for that. Jean, did you want to add on to that?
Sure. Gabi, I think this is so important what we're talking about, because parents and young people also will come to us and say, we need peers that are thinking the same way or acting the same way. Parents need peer support because they feel like they don't want their child to be the only one left out. And if we create communities of similar practice around how we're parenting with screen time, that's also going to help with those bonding relationships.
Yes, thank you. We do have a question, so I thought we can take a question and then we can conclude with one final question for the panel. So Louis, thank you for your question. You have a question around, tips for people that are looking for connection, but who are off social media, so they feel outside where other conversation and connection is happening. So that is a fabulous question. So the question again is, how do we find connection? What are our tools? What are our approaches when we don't want to turn to social media for that, when everyone else we know are gathering there? Anybody want to start with that one?
Well, I think I'll start by telling a story that I shared with the panel before we were on, that my cousins have these great relationships on Facebook, and that I'm not on it because I'm online for work all day and I'm not going to get on Facebook in the evening. And so I do have that feeling of isolation from them when we attend a family thing, like everybody already knows what's going on. And what I always recommend is be a joiner. Now that the pandemic is waning, we have opportunities to join clubs, to get back into, I do watercolor painting, so painting class, dancing, whatever it is you enjoy. My son's in a running club. So take what you love to do and join a group that does it on the ground.
Louis, your question just reminded me of a moment that I found myself in recently at a conference, and definitely devices were not allowed at the conference, but the presenter just opened up the conversation just saying, take your cell phones out, text somebody that you haven't interacted with in a while, and just tell them something you appreciate about them. And what that showed me in that moment was that outside of social media, technology can still be used as a really powerful tool to connect. And it didn't necessarily take like the online platforms where, you know, the majority is located to have that interaction. And I think just looking for like the meaningful, simple ways, whether it's with a device or not, where you can connect one-on-one with somebody and just see and learn what the value of that interaction can look like for you is really, it was just a beautiful experience for me. And I encourage that with others, is just technology, like a simple text, for example, can be something that really helps you connect and still find community.
You know, Bree, I love that. And, you know, as Jean said, I think, you know, in person is always the gold standard, but not always possible. And I too have really relied on text in a new way through the pandemic. And what my family and I started doing is sending audio texts, which just isn't top of mind for me. But when you hear someone's voice, it's really powerful and palpable. And we have a lot of ready access to that through simple, you know, texting and other, you know, voice activated platforms. And there are newer technologies that are not traditional social media that can also be a nice alternative. My sisters and I, through the pandemic, used Marco Polo, where it's an asynchronous way to capture little video snippets and share it with your loved ones. And most of the time we talked about our distress about our hair, but it really kept us feeling connected in a way that we were not, you know, kind of in the mix of social media. Gabi, anything you want to add to that great question?
I love all of your comments. I totally agree, Jean, with what you said about be a joiner. And if you feel like there is something that you feel really passionate about hosting yourself, start posting flyers around your community, and you can create an online container or an in-person that meets at a particular time and place. And really the purpose of gathering with people on a consistent basis is really about depth of relationships and really moving out of this transactional space of how often interaction can be in social media spaces. So yeah, get to really know someone, and I think that starts with getting to really know yourself and really what it is that you want.
Great, thank you. In 1 minute, because we have just 2 minutes left, in 1 minute, I'm going to ask everyone for some parting words. But before we do that, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming. And we are the last official panel of the day, but if you've missed any of today's panels, they're all available to watch digitalwellnessday.com. Every day can be Digital Wellness Day. You will also find on the site you'll find the Digital Flourishing Wheel, which I highly, you know, recommend you look at, and other resources and tools to enhance your personal digital wellness. And if you're in a position of educating and helping support others, there's lots of tools there for you as well. So keep in touch with Digital Wellness Day all year long. You'll also be able to access free copies of a remote work ebook, a digital wellness checkup, and many other resources. So thank you all. And to leave on a really positive note, I just want to quickly, like popcorn, go around and have everybody just say what they're hopeful for the future of technology and relationships. Bree, you're off mute. Let's start.
Good. Wow, that's such a good question. I have a lot of hope, but I am particularly finding hope right now in this moment in younger generations. We're seeing a third of our film audience with the social dilemma is comprised of youth. And we're just seeing that these younger generations have been inspired to improve their own relationships with technology and bring others into their community, their school, family, peer circles into the same awareness to take action for themselves. And that kind of anecdote really gives me hope, because individuals, especially in these younger generations, are doing the work to see themselves in their own capacity and autonomy in the digital wellness space in new and exciting ways, and they are affecting positive change in their own life and bringing people, bring this back into their communities to ignite further awareness and action. I think the digital wellness movement will grow, and our culture around cultivating healthy relationships with technology will bloom when each of us, like we're seeing with our youth audience, realizes the power and skill sets within themselves to affect the change we want to see in the world. And I'm excited to just see how that continues to take shape.
Amazing. Final comments, Gabi, Jean?
I'll hop in. Thanks, Bree, for mentioning the younger generation. Really gives me hope as well. I think every day in our work, we see horrible things that these big tech companies are lobbying at our youth. And it can get very discouraging. Almost as soon as we celebrate a win, we see the next horrible thing come out. And so we couldn't be leaders in this work if we didn't have a radical sense of hope. And I get that from partnerships like with our organization and Digital Wellness Institute, and any of you who have organizations who want to partner together. That's the way we get it done. That's what gives me hope.
I'll just quickly add that I wasn't connected to Bree or Jean before this panel came together. And the fact that our circles are now orbiting and meshing together, it just gives me immense hope. It's like, wow, I'm just now meeting these people who've been doing this amazing work. So I'll just say that.
And I'll just close out by echoing that, because it is that community of practice. When we come together with people that share our values and our passion, it feels like anything is possible. So thank you all. Thanks to the listeners. Happy Digital Wellness Day today and every day. And focus on those relationships. Okay, goodbye for now.
Thanks,
Bye.
Amy.
Thank you.